Scarlet Spider is coming out in Marvel Snap alongside with White Widow and Scar. We're gonna be talking about his strengths and weaknesses, synergies and potential decks. I'll give you my opinion on should you be investing your key in this cash. Let's get to it. Scarlet Spider is a 4-cost 5 power with the ability that reads, copy an exact clone to another location. Now if I'm understanding this correctly, the clone does not have an ability. Similar to how Mr. Sinister's clone will copy any stat buff and will affected by Patriot buff. With an ability to clone himself, he scaled exceedingly well with card buffing, doubling the buff effect from cards like Forge or Namora. We have already seen how powerful with Gwenpool buffing cards like Brood and Mr. Sinister. I wouldn't be surprised if any of those mentioned cards are in his best decks. Another strong point of his is that the keyword activate, which at the moment does not have a direct counter like Cosmo for on review and Enchantress for ongoing. Nothing can really stop you from activating his ability. This effect can play out like Phoenix Force. When you play the card Phoenix Force, nothing can really stop you from spreading the Revive Multiple Man. However, unlike Phoenix Force, Scarlet Spider does not have a strong selection of supporting cards. There are a few ways to buff Scarlet Spider while he's in hand, in your deck, targeted buff, or while he's on board. None of these options are stellar, the only standout being Forge and Namora. Gwenpool is great hand buffing, but it's held back by the fact that it's a 4-cost, same as Scarlet Spider. Sure, you can ramp her out a turn early with Psylocke or Zabu, but this may limit the deck building options as Gwenpool decks does not run these cards in her best decks. Summoning his clone at another location has its upsides and downsides. Upsides being reaching an unreachable location can sometimes win a lane outright. However, unable to control where the clone goes can be a real downside, as there are situations where you might clog yourself out, and taking out 2 of the 12 playable space could be a problem if you don't deck build properly around it. Scarlet Spider's biggest downside is that drawing him on the last turn will result in a dead draw, as all activate cards requires a setup turn, which probably why activate cards does not have a direct counter like Cosmo. Now, here onto the synergy. Like I mentioned before, most of these cards are not top tiers by themselves, with the exceptions of Gwenpool, Forge, and Namora. Looking at this list, Namora decks will be his best synergy by far, because Namora's best deck already running cards like Forge, Ironheart, Symbiote Spider-Man. Now, is he worth your key? To answer that, we will have to talk about the 2 other cards, White Widow and Scar. White Widow at the moment is the best 2 costs alongside with Kate Bishop. She does not have the highest ceiling for a 2 cost, but when played she will win priority early and clogging up space, which limits option from your opponent. When played on turn 4, she can oftentimes clog out a lane and win the lane outright. Her value as a card cannot be quantified by stats alone. Her utility are quite universal as you can play her in almost any deck. Scar is good. Energy cheating or ramp will always be a strong mechanic in Snap. Problem is not Scar but his deck. His decks are easy to predict how much power output are on turn 6, removing the element of surprise. His 10 power enablers are quite limited. With the recent nerf to Mockingbird, he's not in a good spot at the moment. And finally, Scarlet Spider. Without Namora, you may find it difficult to slot him into decks. Though I think his release is going to be his weakest state, I would not be surprised that Scarlet Spider will end up like Phoenix Force. With new card release, new ways to buff him, he will get his time to shine and show his true potential as a card. I would not spend my keys on Scarlet Spider. If you have Namora in your collection and you're missing White Widow, only then I would consider it, otherwise it's a skip, considering that the October Spotlight cash are looking quite interesting. With that, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you on the next one.